minds. Also, a ban on the arms trade would make getting weapons virtually impossible. Globaloney. Globaloney is a portmanteau word for global baloney, that is, global nonsense or global ridiculous, meaning that the idea of creating a global state is simply unrealistic nonsense, a pipe dream that could never happen due to the enormous obstacles blocking its path, such as the strength of nationalisms, linguistic barriers, cultural barriers, religious barriers, etc. People who feel this way think that the total resistance to globification is so strong that the idea is not only doomed, but ridiculous. Global Parliament. A global democracy and a global state would need a global parliament to make the global laws. It would be elected globally, with presumably the number of elected representatives being proportional to the sizes of the populations of the cultures comprising it. The European Parliament and the parliaments of smaller nation-state federations could serve as a model for the global parliament. Its job would be to make laws that would be applicable all over the planet. Global police force. If the violation of a global law is bad enough and on a large enough scale, the global police force would become a global military. But at smaller scales, the role of the global police force would be to police the global laws, that is, to enforce them and to punish people and groups who break them. For example, the global police force could catch and punish arms traders, drug traders, etc. Global political parties, asterisk. These are political parties of the global parliament. Elected members of the global parliament would belong to global political parties. Those parties getting more votes in the global elections would be more likely to form the global government, having power over the world's citizens, that is, Globins. Global President. The global president is the leader of the global state, the leader of Globa. The president could be elected by the citizens of Globa, either directly, for example, the US system, or automatically as the leader of the global political party winning the global election. For example, the UK system, or perhaps via other methods. The global president is the most powerful person on the planet, whose role would be to make the most important decisions concerning the well-being of the citizens of the globe. Global public opinion. In a global state, with a global media using a global language, the power of global public opinion would be overwhelming. Imagine some nation-state leader getting out of line, so that billions of the globe's citizens disapproved of his actions. The citizens of that nation-state would be very quickly become conscious of the majority opinion of the planet against their own nation-state leader and be influenced by their negative arguments. It would be virtually impossible for a nation-state leader to go against global public opinion. There would be wisdom in the views of billions of people. It would be foolish of maverick leaders to try to contradict the wishes of the billions. Global sovereignty, asterisk. This term is analogous to the term national sovereignty. Instead of a nation-state having the highest level of authority or sovereignty over the people of a nation, the global state does. The global state has global sovereignty over the peoples of all the nation-states. In practice, nation-state members of the global state can still make laws analogous to the way states in a federation, for example, the state of California in a nation-state of the USA, can make state laws that can be contested by federal laws. Hence, in a global state, federal or nation-state laws can be contested by global state laws. Thus, an individual who wishes to contest the law at the nation-state level can appeal to the global state level. Global state. A global state is the most important concept of this book. A global state is a political unit the size of the whole planet. The leaders of a global state would have sovereignty over all the Earth's citizens. For a global state to come into being, very probably a string of cultural, economic, technological, ideological, etc. preconditions would be needed. For example, a strong degree of global cultural homogenization due to the creation of a global media and a global language. The global state, call it Globa, G-L-O-B-A, would need to establish global institutions such as a global parliament, global president, global political parties, global police force, global military, etc. It could then wipe out the arms trade, wars, global poverty, etc., and tackle those global problems such as global warming, global development, global education, global happiness, etc. Global tourism. Global tourism occurs when everyone on the planet is a tourist, that is, tourism on a global scale. As countries get richer, a higher proportion of their populations travel internationally. This has a broadening effect upon the mind. Millions of people, especially those who are more educated and more intelligent, enjoy the experience of international travel. As more people travel, the global level of multiculturalism grows. More people become multis and develop a sense of cultural relativity and learn from the superiorities of other cultures. For example, in the 1970s, large numbers of young Australians took advantage of cheap airfares created by the invention of the jumbo jet to travel to the US and to Europe. They quickly became conscious of the inferiority and provinciality of their own culture and felt ashamed. This shame motivated them to upgrade their own culture, which they did to some extent. Certainly the Australian level of international awareness rose in the 1970s and 1980s. This process is still waiting to happen to many poor countries whose citizens still cannot afford yet to travel the world. Ad-libbing, for example, China. China is still relatively poor. Admittedly now about 100 million Chinese travel internationally, mostly to other nearby Asian countries. But China has yet really on a major scale to go through this process. But it's happening. Back to the book. Global trade. Global trade is international trade at the global level. That is, countries trade with each other, with other countries from all over the world, not just with neighbouring countries. For example, the author bought a rather odd-looking winter cap of Turkish style in Berlin that was made in China. Why Turkish and why Chinese made? There are many Turkish migrants working in Germany, and China now makes many of the world's clothing goods. 80% of the goods sold in America's Walmart stores are made in China and are very cheap by American standards. We live increasingly in a global economy, relying heavily on global trade. The planet has learned the hard way over the 20th century that socialist, centrally planned economies don't work as well. Look at East and West Germany, North and South Korea, China and Japan, etc. Capitalist open markets with foreign trade and competition generate rapid increases in living standards, as shown recently by most countries around the world. Even countries like China and Vietnam are now strongly market-driven. More and more countries are joining the WTO, World Trade Organization, and hence are obliged to obey WTO rules. All this generates a much greater degree of global trade than several decades ago. Global trade implies global traders. That is, people who travel a lot to do global business, staying in foreign hotels, meeting foreign business partners, and hence becoming more cosmopolitan, more multi as a result. Global trade is one of the most important prerequisites for the creation of a global state. Global trade drives a global economy, and a global economy will establish before a global culture. Globally colonized mind, asterisk. A globally colonized mind is one which has been dominated by the ideas and norms of a global culture, which have overwhelmed the ideas and norms of a person's former monoculture. Once a global media exists, presented largely in a global language, billions of people will have their minds changed from thinking nationally to thinking globally. The percentage of their traditional monocultured ideas and thoughts will be small in comparison with those coming from the global culture. In effect, their minds will have been colonized by the global culture via the global media. Globin, asterisk. A Globin is a citizen of Globa, the global state. That is, any person on the earth in a historical era that has already created a global state. Globification, asterisk. Globification is the process by which a global state is brought into being. The stepping stones in the globification process will probably be something like this. At first, technology will increase the bit rate of the internet a billionfold, which will enable a global media, which in turn will generate a global language, which will create a global cultural homogenization. which will lead to a globist ideology for the establishment of a global state, with all its advantages of eliminating wars, the arms trade, global poverty, etc. Of course, many other factors will help in the globification process, besides a hugely faster internet. Globification, asterisk. Globification has another meaning, namely the process by which a person becomes globified, that is, made into a global or globin. A global, or globin, is someone who thinks globally, whereas a global is someone who thinks globally, whereas a globin is used more in the context of a citizen of Globa, living in a global state. Strictly speaking, a globin need not be a global, although it would be difficult not to be. Globify, asterisk. To globify people is to convert them from being monos or multis into globals or globins. That is, by expanding their minds to thinking and acting globally, due largely to years of exposure to the glow media. Globify, asterisk. To globify also means to make the planet into a global state. Globism, asterisk. Globism is the ideology in favour of creating a global state. This book is a globist book. Globist, asterisk. A globist is a person who is in favour of creating a global state. A globist is a person who is an adherent of globism. Globist, asterisk. Globist is the adjective of the noun globism. For example, a globist ideology, a globist pamphlet, a globist politician, etc. Globist ideology, asterisk. Globist ideology is the ideology in favour of creating a global state. Globists will push for the creation of such a state, claiming that the world would be a much better place to live in as a result, because a global state would get rid of wars, get rid of the arms trade, of global poverty, make people materially and culturally richer and happier. Globists will probably form globist political parties and help steer global politics into a global state. Globist incrementalism, asterisk. This term refers to the idea that globists should not push the anti-globists too hard or too fast, because if they do, they will only antagonize them. The anti-globists will then actively resist and slow down the whole progression of the globist program of creating a global state. Hence the globists should find an optimum rate of globist persuasion, working particularly with the young people who have so much to gain. The young people have to learn their first culture anyway, so it may as well be the global culture. Hence, progression towards the creation of a global state should be incremental, yet nevertheless be expressed in terms of a clearly stated ideological goal, so that prospective adherents to the globist vision can identify with it. Globist national political parties route, asterisk. This is one of the route models towards the creation of a global state. This model suggests that globist political parties of different nation-states agree to work together to join their countries into a Federation of Nations, FEDN. Perhaps there may be more than one FEDN at a given time on the planet. If there's only one, then other globist political parties could push their nation-states to join it. Globist political party, asterisk. A globist political party is a political party of a nation-state whose explicit aim is to see its country become a member of the Federation of Nations, FEDN, or FEDERA, as a stepping stone towards creating a global state. Such a party would have a strong globist political philosophy. Globist political parties of many nation-states could combine forces to become a global globist political party. Globiversity, asterisk. This term is a portmanteau word from global university. A globiversity would have students from all over the world who use the internet to receive lectures from the world's best professors and to send their homeworks to be graded by tutors who are distributed all over the planet. One can imagine globiversities becoming big businesses. Smaller globiversities could also flourish in a global culture because highly specialized topics could be taught and still be profitable due to a larger interested public. A flowering of such universities would be possible, generating a far greater number with greater flexibility than is possible with today's monocultured universities. Globo, asterisk. A globo is the name of the global currency unit, similar to the term euro. Its plural form is globos, pronounced globos. The symbol of the globo is the capital G, with two rather than one horizontal stroke of the G. Glomedia, asterisk. Glomedia is a portmanteau word for global media. The goal of the Glomedia project is to give the world the world's entire media as a consequence of the bitrate annual doubling (BRAD) law. With an internet a billion times more powerful than that possible in the early years of the century, it will be technologically and economically possible to present the entire world's media in vivid 3D images. The Glomedia will place the entire world's media, that is all the radio, TV, movies, newspapers, magazines, books, the world's libraries, etc. on the internet, so that every person on earth has access to it. Well, we're getting there. We're getting there in year 2017 as I film this. This book believes that this single factor will probably play the strongest role in creating a global state. People's beliefs are strongly influenced by what they see on the media. If the ideas they absorb come from the globe, their outlook will become global. They will thus become more favourable to globist ideology and be more inclined to accept the creation of Globa. GMF, asterisk. GMF stands for Globin Military Force, that is, a military under control of the Globin Parliament, GP, to be used to squash illegal acts of violence anywhere in the world, perform peacekeeping missions, etc. GP, asterisk. GP is short for Globin Parliament, that is, the Parliament for Globa, that makes global laws for all Globins on the planet. Grassroots pressure route, asterisk. This is one of the route models towards the creation of a global state. As globist thinking spreads, more and more ordinary people in many nation states will become favourable to the idea of living in a global state. They will then push their democratically elected national politicians to make this happen. If this pressure is strong enough, new globist political parties will be formed in these countries, and they will push their countries to join the Federation of Nations, FedN or Federa, as a stepping stone towards creating Globa. Groupist, an adjective meaning coming from the group. For example, the Japanese exert an enormous groupist pressure on themselves. The word has connotations of repression of individual freedoms and making people unhappy because they're not doing what they really want to do, because they are so brainwashed that doing so would be to go against the group, which is a real taboo in Japanese groupist culture. GSL Project, asterisk. GSL stands for Global Satellite Learning. That is, the idea of educating everyone on the planet by giving everyone a very cheap satellite receiver made in billions of copies that is very small so that they can be easily smuggled into dictatorial countries where the dictatorial leaders will ban their use. Using very high frequency satellite signals, the citizens of the Earth can be educated by the globiversities. Education is essential to pull the third world countries out of poverty. The GSL project aims to do that. It will also help the spread of the global language and accelerate thereby the creation of a global state. Happiness raising, asterisk. Once the populations of countries become materially affluent, political emphasis can shift away from raising economic living standards to raising general happiness levels. Governments will become preoccupied with happiness-raising measures. Hybrid approaches route, asterisk. This is one of the route models towards the creation of a global state. This book suggests more than half a dozen different route models towards the creation of a global state. This particular model is actually a combination, that is, hybrid, of several models, which may occur at the same time. Ideacide, asterisk. Ideacide is the mass killing of ideas in the context of a global media and using a global language. People will be exposed to the world's ideas, and only the best, most popular will survive. The vast majority of them will be killed off, hence ideacide. Ideological barriers. Ideological barriers to the formation of a global state may be strong. A similar situation may exist with religious barriers or nationalist barriers. For all these reasons, it is felt that probably the only effective way to create a global state is first to culturally homogenize the planet. Once all people are much the same, due to being exposed most of their lives to the same global media, it will be easier to persuade them to come together to form a global state and then benefit from that state. For example, no wars, greater cultural richness, greater happiness, etc. One of the most effective ways to overcome ideological barriers is to expose opposing ideological groups to each other's media and ideas, so that each group can examine calmly the counterclaims of the other side. This will be possible with a global media in a global language. Laogai. The Chinese word Laogai, that's Laogai, is the equivalent of the Russian word Gulag, that is a Chinese labor camp for political prisoners. There are, in today's China, this is 2017, there are over 1,000 Laogai, these political prisoner slave labor camps in China, with 3 to 5 million political prisoners, which is why the world labels China such a political pygmy nation, a political shithole. Chinese government is hated worldwide. To know more about this, go to the Laogai Museum, that's one word, .org. The Laogai Museum was set up by Harry Wu, who spent 19 years of his life in Laogai for making a negative statement about Mao Zedong when he was a student at university. He has an utter hatred of the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, not surprisingly. Back to the book. Life policy, asterisk. When nanotechnology enables aging cells to be rejuvenated by nanoscale robots, then death will no longer be naturally programmed, so that people can live forever. But the surface of the Earth is finite, so sooner or later a life policy would have to be introduced after hefty debate on the part of the world's citizens. Life policy would determine who lives, who dies, who reproduces, etc., so as to keep the total population on the Earth within a reasonable limit. Possibly humans selected to die might be allowed to colonize other worlds, or asteroids, or space colonies, and remain immortal. Linguistic barriers. One of the greatest barriers to the creation of a global state is the existence of different languages in the world, which divide people into linguistic groups who cannot communicate with each other. An obvious precondition for the creation of a global state is global cultural homogenization, and the means to achieve that is the creation of a global language. And the way to achieve that is a global media. And the way to achieve that is the Brad law, BRAD, that is the bit rate annual doubling of the speed of the internet, leading to a billion-fold increase in 30 years, allowing the globe to receive the globe's total media content in vivid 3D images, and through the internet. Masculism, asterisk. The ideology of men's liberation, that is, the ideology of the masculists, see below. Ad-libbing, this is a term I coined in the early 70s. Masculist, asterisk. An advocate of the ideology of men's liberation, for example, that women should have careers and not parasite off men's money. Merge the Continental Union's route, asterisk. This is one of the route models towards the creation of a global state. At the time of writing, there are a number of politico-economic unions in the world, such as the European Union, EU, the African Union, AU, etc. The Japanese are proposing the creation of an Asian Union that would consist of Japan, China, Korea, India, and Southeast Asian countries. As these unions knit together politically more closely, they become more of a post-national political unit, PNPU. The idea is that these continental-sized unions or units then join together into even bigger PNPUs. Eventually, the PNPUs merge to become Globa. Merge the economic blocks route, asterisk. This is one of the route models towards the creation of a global state. This idea is similar to the merge the continental unions route, except that it's initially less ambitious. There are more economic trade blocks. For example, the EU, European Union, NAFTA, North American Free Trade Area, Mercosur, South America, ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, than political economic unions such as the EU or the AU, African Union. It's easier to combine nation states into a trade bloc than into a political union. Hence, as a stepping stone, the idea is to merge trading blocs first. For example, NAFTA could merge with Mercosur and invite all countries of the Americas to join an FTAA, Free Trade Area of the Americas. The EU and EFTA, European Free Trade Area, could merge with Russia and the Mediterranean countries of North Africa to form a large economic trading bloc. Once several countries have joined the economic free trade area, it's easier for them to merge politically. The idea is that the economic merging would precede the political merging. MGP, asterisk. An MGP is a member of the Globin Parliament, that is, an elected Globin politician belonging to a Globin political party. Mini Globa, asterisk. A mini Globa is a partially formed Globa, that is, a partially formed global state. This may sound a bit like an oxymoron, but the term is used to denote the idea of an agglomeration of nation-states or blocs that have already come together to form a partial Globa, waiting for the remaining states or blocs to join it. It's highly unlikely that all nation-states or blocs would decide to join together at the same moment. The formation of Globa will be a gradual, incremental, cumulative process. When it is well underway, but not yet complete, it can be labelled a mini Globa or Fed-in or Federa. Mono, asterisk. A mono is a monocultured and usually monolingual person who has lived in only one culture and hence is limited as an individual by the limitations of the single culture that has programmed that person. A mono tends to have a poor sense of cultural relativity, having not lived in nor experienced the differences of other cultures. Monos therefore tend to have absolutist values with their unquestioning, unconscious acceptance of their own cultural norms that they tend to impose consciously or more often unconsciously on people not belonging to their own monoculture. Such limitations make monos seem boring and limited to the multis. Monoculture. A monoculture is a single culture which is effectively cut off from other cultures. Its media is largely controlled by the government of the nation-state of the monoculture. Its people are largely unaware of the superiorities of other cultures that they could benefit from if only they could absorb them into their own culture. But this doesn't happen because they are out of contact with them and hence ignorant of them. Monocultures breed monos, who are usually monolingual, culturally absolutist in their values, and suffer from their monoculturedness relative to what they could have if they lived in a global state. Monocultured. Having lived in only one culture, monos are monocultured and thus tend to be unaware of the superiorities of other cultures and hence do not absorb them into their personalities, lifestyles and beliefs. Monocultured ignorance, asterisk. One of the basic attitudes of multis is that monos, quote, do themselves damage by adherence to stupid customs, but don't see their customs as stupid because being monos, they have never seen alternatives. Such alternatives simply lie outside their life experiences, end quote. For example, take traditional Anglo-Saxon or Chinese sexual Puritanism and compare it to the sexual attitudes of the French. The French sneer at the Puritanism of the British and their colonies, for example, America, Canada, Australia, etc. Ils ne savent pas vivre, the French say. They don't know how to live. Most Anglo-Saxons who live in France for a while quickly learn to appreciate French attitudes to the pleasures of the flesh, or as the French say, l'éducation sentimentale, sentimental or feeling education. They then Frenchify their ways and lead happier, more sexually fulfilling lives as a result. The French have probably the healthiest relations between the sexes than any other country, le pays d'amour, the country of love. We could all learn from the French in that respect. Such multicultural learning is precisely what being a multi is all about. If you're a mono, then you don't know about the superiorities of other cultures. You cannot learn from them. You cannot absorb them into your personality. These superiorities cannot become part of your monoculture. This is monocultured ignorance, and the world is worse off because of it. Monocultured media, asterisk. This is media that provides the cultural products of only one culture. Usually it comes from one government, from one country. Often it is delivered in only one language, so that the monos who absorb it remain monolingual and monocultured. Monocultured media makes it easy for monocultured governments to brainwash their peoples into the views that the monocultured leaders want them to believe, especially concerning the desirability of war. Monos exposed to only monocultured media remain ignorant of the superiorities of other cultures and suffer from the consequences